beautiful. Okay, so you got here. The pandemic hits. The gig goes away. You're like, okay, right? And it worked out with your work visa and everything.
Yeah.
Obviously, we'll just leave that alone. And so when did the idea for pitch meeting come about? Which if you're out there and you're not aware of pitch meeting, you got to look it up. If you're in Nashville, if you're visiting in Nashville and you are lucky enough to be here on a night when pitch meeting is happening, you got to go to the show. It's unlike anything really that is happening anywhere in this town and probably any other town in America. There's my pitch for pitch meeting. Okay.
Okay. So, I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot. When I toured from July 2019 to March 2020, I never got to really experience Nashville. People say, "Oh, you live in Nashville? How's Nashville?" I'd be like, "I am here once a week." I don't.
You lived in a bunk.
Yeah. And Nashville is where I wash my clothes, and that's it. And I lived in Hermitage, so I'm so close to the airport. So it's like I never really got to go experience East, West, downtown, whatever it might be. I tried, but even then, you don't really integrate unless you're there in some longer length, right? And when COVID happened, I was just like, do I go home? What do I do? I don't know. Like, if I go home, maybe I might get stuck. Who knows? We'll be back in 2 weeks. We'll be back in 2 months. That game was kind of getting tiring. And around October or August, the conception happened in August, and the first one was in October. I was just sitting down with some buddies from the Lindsay L crew, and I was like, I used to host a jam session in Australia called the Monday Jam. It is Sydney's best jam session, and by best, there's only 21 million people in Australia. Texas alone is 30, and Australia is about the same landmass as the United States. So
I'm sure it was still awesome.
Sure, but
minimize.
But it's the one of it's really the only one at that time. But
fair.
As much as I want to go, I'm really good at wording stuff that's like, yeah, it's the best jam session.
It's part of the promotional requirements of this industry.
But it's the only one. But the beautiful thing about that jam session, because it is the only one, or the main one that really kind of more people knew about, I met some of my heroes there. I met David Ryan Harris there, who plays with Mayer. I met some of Justin Timberlake's band there. I met some of Jill Scott's band members there.
So this would be a place when cats were coming through town, they'd swing, if they had the Monday off, they'd come by. Awesome.
So it kind of helped me. That's where I met Corey Wrong and Petar Yanich on drums. So they would just come by anytime they're on the road or on the tour. So I got to meet a lot of people outside of my bubble. And I had this skill set of hosting a night. And I knew how to host some kind of event where there's music and there's a house band. But that was more like a jam. So people make stuff up, or you do Superstition, or a different version of Superstition this time, or Superstition in a different key, or Superstition but slow, whatever. But my point is, it's covers. It's a lot of covers, and you just make up stuff, which is awesome. And I kind of missed that, and that's kind of where I find the best musicians, because that was my mentality. That's when Lindsay L, the artist that hired me in Australia, that moved me here, felt. That's what she felt, because the musicians she felt were musicians that were always living at the edge musically. What I mean by that is, anytime I see a band or a musician at a show that it's their show and they're good, that's awesome. But in my head, I'm like, well, you're supposed to be. That's your gig. Mm-hmm. You better be good. You had all the time to rehearse.
Right.
But to me, where I like finding musicians is when they don't know what's next. So there's something to that, right? If it's a jam session, you just get up, you don't know what's happening, and you see where the musician goes when there's no platform, what they do. To me, those are where you find the best musicians.
It is a tightrope walk without a net.
Yeah.
Especially if there's a paying crowd there.
Yeah, exactly. And that's magical to me.
Absolutely.
Because, anyway.
It's the crucible, man.
Yeah. It's like, that's where music is. Here is repetition, and here is safety, which is fine, which is always great. But music is, at least for me, music is here when I don't know anymore. But my point, going back to...
Which is a crazy thing for a bass player to say, because I think of all the instruments where you can kind of you can hang with a lot of instruments. Drums, you don't have to hit the right note. You just have to hit the pocket. Guitar player can float on the top of things. Keys can kind of but the bass has got to spell out the chord. There's no hiding. So that's a crazy thing for a bass player.
Well, I look at the bass as either. The musicians I prefer to play with are, this is selfish, but it's like, I can change anything. I change the weight of whatever it is that's happening. And either the musician can fight me and then it becomes an issue, or they just like, I have no choice but to lean into what I'm doing. My favorite musicians are the ones that go, follow me. Yeah. Here we go. But going back to at least the idea of pitch meeting, I had this skill set of running a jam. And mid-COVID, I'm just sitting down, maybe high as balls because there's nothing else to do. Maybe. And I'm sitting down.
The whole nation was high as balls. I think it's fine.
I was sitting down next to my buddy Andrew Stone, and I was asking him a question. Andrew Stone was a tour manager of Lindsay L. He now is a songwriter in town, and I was just telling him about like, hey man, is there a night in Nashville where there's a house band, right? There's a house band, they play, but when people get up, it's not a jam. It's like they play their original music. And he's like, there's the Opry. And I'm like, nah, something a bit more accessible. Something that someone that just moved here can come into. And they just come and they play their original music. And he's like, what do you mean? Like, do they send songs beforehand? And I'm like, no, I don't have time to do that. Like, what do you mean? Like, they just get up, like a jam session. Imagine a jam, people just get up. All right, you and sax get up, or you and whatever get up. But instead of musicians, it's songwriters. They get up, and there's a house band playing their songs on the spot. And they're like, and he was like, not really. Then I asked around. I did a bit of research, and I went around during October when Nashville was kind of open. And I'm just looking around, asking around if they've heard of this idea, and then nothing. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, a month later, a couple of weeks later, I started it. I was just like, well, there's nothing happening at the moment. We're not on the road. I'll just use this band that I'm playing with, Lindsay's band at that time. We had nothing on. Let's just do this thing. And we started it at a little venue called Belcourt Taps.
Yeah, and which is the tiniest possible venue that you can ever imagine. It's half the size of this room.
Yeah, exactly. And now, which is funny now because now it's a dumpling house. They sell dumplings there now. But
they've sold so many things in that room since I've lived here.
But that's where I started. I know that a lot of the times, this came from a quick side story. I had a lot of friends when I was growing up that would tell me great business ideas. I had a great friend that cooked hot chicken, like really good hot chicken. More wings, like Buffalo Wild Wings or Hooters. And he was like, oh man, one day I want to get a food truck and I can sell all this stuff and people, blah, 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 blah. And he had a full-time job, some corporate thing or government thing. And I'm like, why don't you? And I've heard that. I'm so excited for my friends when they say all these great ideas and then nothing. And I'm like, I told myself, I don't want to tell people my dreams and just tell them my dreams and keep talking about dreams. That's tiring. So
it's a lot of people.
When I have an idea or when I want to do something, I just, okay, well, how do you make that happen? So when I thought of this idea, I was like, cool, well, I have the band. I checked around some different venues. I have this idea. Like, hey, can I do this thing? You don't have to pay me, it's fine. I just want to do this idea. And I started the first pitch meeting on October of 2020, mid-COVID, with a 5-piece band. And here we go. And people got up, did their songs, and it just started from there, and it kept building. Like the build it and they will come mentality, they started coming.
Hey, thanks for watching. Go ahead and click here to like and subscribe. You can click right there to watch another video or click here to watch a playlist featuring songs of the Morse Code Podcast. Okay, thank you very much.